What's up, everyone? Ben with the BTC Sessions here, and this is your daily session.
Hodl the Bitcoin.
Before we dive in, just a couple quick things. Of course, shout out to sponsors of the show, Ledn.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin for a couple of different services, one of which is to get a Canadian or US dollar loan with your Bitcoin as collateral. There's a couple minute process to sign up, and you're typically funded within 24 hours into your bank account. And secondly, they've got a Bitcoin savings account where you can earn Bitcoin on your Bitcoin. So be sure to check them out. And if you use the link down below and decide to get a loan, well, then they'll add $50 worth of Bitcoin to your account as well. And secondly, of course, if you're into Bitcoin at all, then privacy on the internet is of paramount importance. So I partnered with NordVPN here. This is a VPN, a virtual private network that allows you to obfuscate where you are in the world, as well as encrypt your browsing history so that it's not open to prying eyes. This is very important. I have it myself on both my phone and my computer. They have a great deal where essentially if you use the link down below, you can sign up for 75% off. It amounts to about $3 a month, so not bad. Added bonus of this, it helps you avoid copyright strikes when you are using torrents, if that's a thing that you do. It also helps you unblock geo-blocked content. So if you can't access something from a particular country, just change where you are using NordVPN, and that will be unlocked for you. And with that, let's dive into the news. So the Bitcoin price over the past couple of days has had a nice little bump. So we did have that big retrace from the massive pump that we had over the past week, where it went up to around 13,800 and then all the way down below 10,000 for the first time in a little while. Well, we've since bumped back up and actually had a little breakout just recently. And we even tapped around the $12,000 mark very briefly and have since retraced a little bit. In fact, right now we are sitting at around 11.7. Earlier, even again, I don't even know why I talk about the price, honestly, because by the time I post this, it ends up being completely different. But at least we get some context. So yeah, at the time of recording this, it's around 11.7. But it was down around 11.5 for a bit of a dip earlier. So what are we looking at here? Well, currently we see some support around 11.3. So let's hope that we don't break down below that. However, on the upside, if we continue kind of the trend that we're in, so you'll see that we broke out of this kind of descending channel. Well, if we continue, we see some resistance at around 12.3, around 13.8, and above that around 14.5. So if we can get out of this sideways chop and keep breaking up, then those are some areas of interest to look at. One other notable thing about this price action is that volume. So the amount of trades being executed and Bitcoin being moved around is way up in comparison to the absolute peak of the bubble in 2017. So down here, these dark lines are volume, and you can see it's notably higher, and it has been for the past number of months here. So looking at that, you can interpret different ways, but for me, it's showing that it's not just a quick pump and dump, but rather that people are actually getting in and trading this stuff and becoming interested. And we're seeing that reflected in the volume. So we're seeing these price rises with lots of people utilizing Bitcoin, as opposed to if there was no movement as far as volume goes and there were very few trades happening, then it would be a bit more worrying to see these bumps in price, because they could easily be knocked down. So yeah, interesting to see there. Let's move on. This article made me cringe. It's just the same narrative keeps on getting pushed, that Bitcoin is wasting energy. And first off, you need to take a look at the fact, or not the fact, you need to consider what you think to be a waste of energy in the context of some of the issues that have come out of central banking and what is this alternative bringing us. So this report here, or this uh, is basically referencing something done by the University of Cambridge, where they created an online tool, and it's called the Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index. So basically tracks the terawatt hours per year that Bitcoin consumes. What they don't touch on with this tool is where is that energy coming from, and we'll get into that in a second. However, the obvious headline grab here is that Bitcoin consumes more electricity than Switzerland. So that, you know, it's a headline. It's meant to grab your attention. And so in the context of this, yes, we're somewhere between Switzerland and Colombia right now, and we account for about 0.25% of the world's entire electricity consumption. Essentially what they're saying here is that this is a huge waste of energy. However, I have yet to see a study on even an individual bank on how many terawatt hours each individual bank consumes per year. Now, later in the article, they get into how the actual transactions per transaction, if you divvy up Bitcoin transactions versus its terawatt hours per year, that is the most expensive per transaction network out there, and that the banking industry is much more, we'll say, lean in terms of what it costs to do a transaction. However, this doesn't take into account a couple of things. One, decentralization is expensive and difficult and is energy intensive if you want to do it right and not be able to reverse transactions and screw with the system. And you want that ledger to be immutable. It's secured by proof of work, by the energy consumed in the process of validating transactions. And so to remove that proof of work, it becomes incredibly easy to attack the network. So it is security. That's why it's necessary. Secondly, on the base layer, a single transaction is no longer necessarily a single transaction. It can be a batched transaction, which is actually carrying out sometimes hundreds of different transactions in a single go. On top of that, you also now have Lightning Network, which is an extension of that. And so when you have a channel open or close, there could be thousands, millions of transactions that are all being settled with a single closure of a Lightning channel. So to say that Bitcoin's per transaction cost in terms of electricity is high is kind of a bunk metric, because there's no way to tell at this point how many transactions were facilitated by a single settlement on the Bitcoin layer at the base level. So kind of ridiculous. Secondly, the point that I wanted to touch on is it consumes more energy. You got to unpack that a little bit, because where is this energy coming from? And based on studies that have been done on Bitcoin that are better than this article, a lot of that energy is coming from renewables. In fact, Bitcoin mining consumes is the most green energy sector on the planet. It's like 70-something% renewable energy. And a lot of that is because Bitcoin is utilizing things like hydro that are stranded in areas where it's impossible to collect that energy and send it off to a grid somewhere, because it's just too far, and you have energy degradation the further you try to send it away from its source. And so you have a hydro dam that would just never be used for anything other than maybe a small local town, and they can't consume all of that. So essentially they just open up the floodgates and the water goes through without any of that energy being collected. And again, this is green energy. It's not wasteful. They're not burning something and polluting. It's literally just green energy that is being unused. And so what can be done with that? Well, you can convert that energy into Bitcoin by becoming a miner and just collecting that energy, all of the excess that isn't being used. And that's what we see by and large in a lot of places. In my local province, we have a lot of stranded energy in the form of natural gas. And so what ends up happening is you have natural gas somewhere. It costs X amount to get it out of the ground and to export it and sell it. And a lot of times these energy providers are being forced to sell it at a loss because the price of natural gas is so low. So what can you do there? And not only that, but whenever you try to pull oil out of the ground, you end up also having gas, sometimes in the form of methane, which a lot of the time can just be vented into the atmosphere, which is not particularly good for it. So what can be done there? Well, instead of selling at a loss, you can utilize that natural gas, put it into Bitcoin miners, and utilize that energy to gain a profit by supporting and securing the Bitcoin network. The methane you can actually capture, use that as energy, again, put it into Bitcoin miners and collect that reward for mining. But you're also not only are you turning a negative into a positive, you're also getting rid of carbon taxes that would be happening to you, or at least reducing them because you're no longer polluting as much as you would have been. And secondly, you are where was I going with this? Yes, so you're reducing your emissions. You are reducing those carbon taxes that you're paying, and all around it's a net positive for people, and it's energy that would not have been able to get out to other places in the first place. So the net positive here is ridiculous, and it's just not examined at all in this article, and I expect to see plenty more articles like this. So what are you going to do? Let's move on here. So Craig Wright, he's been in court in Florida for a while. We touched on this the other day. It's not going particularly well for him. Recently, through the whole thing, essentially there's been a lot of documents that have come forth that have been shown to be questionable. Some would say fraudulent. And there's another such case of this where there was an email that was essentially purported to be a 2012 trust document where some Bitcoin, they were discussing the terms of Bitcoin that was going to be held in this something called the Tulip Trust. However, while the email was said to have been created in 2012, well, when you go into the metadata, it's actually using a font that was created in 2015. And so it shows that this email in question was actually either doctored or changed in some way, shape, or form after the fact, or created entirely after the fact, like years later. And this is a document that was provided by Craig's team as evidence to the court. So again, not super great for him. I'm sure we'll see plenty more of this in the future. Best of luck, Craig. Let's move on. And in a case of, well, it's it's Independence Day today, and Donald Trump is doing his thing by essentially saying that he wants to inflate the US dollar further. So this was Donald Trump's tweet the other day. He said, China and Europe are playing big currency manipulation games and pumping money into their system in order to compete with the USA. We should match or continue being dummies who sit back and politely watch as other countries continue to play their games as they have for many years. So essentially, he's saying that China and Europe are printing more money, pumping it into the system to bump up their economies and be competitive to the US. And he's saying, hey, they're printing money. We should too, to be competitive with them. We should be just drumming money up out of nothing, printing it, and just pumping it into the system, pumping our stock markets, and who cares what happens from that. So if there's ever been a case to buy Bitcoin and hedge against something like the US dollar, Jesus, like this is a walking endorsement for Bitcoin and to insulate yourself from terrible monetary policy. It's crazy because it just said like there's no repercussions in doing so. It's a hidden tax is what it is. When you print money just toss it out to the banking system, and the banks aren't going to give this out as loans. They proved that in 2008, 2009 when they got bailed out, and all of that money, it didn't go out to small businesses and as loans. It ended up being pumped into the stock market and used as speculation. And, you know, we've had the longest run of you know, positive stock market, and we've had the longest series of gains in history, the longest bull market in history. And it's largely because money just got printed and it just keeps getting pumped into the system, and they're kicking the can down the road. And wow, again, I almost want to frame this and use it as a reminder of why Bitcoin is here and why it's necessary. So yeah, and guys, just to wrap up, I redid my website, so feel free to check that out, btcsessions.ca. It's a little bit simpler, easy to navigate, just a few basic things, so you can check that out. And secondly, I am having an event here in Calgary for brand new beginners. Again, I did one recently. It went very well. This one is August 8th. If you're in the Calgary area, I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably already pretty well in tune with Bitcoin. So this is for very beginners. However, if you're in the Calgary area and you know of people that may be interested in this, I'm doing an affiliate program for this one. And so for every ticket sold, if you have to contact me first, so you can reach out to me, contact@btcsessions.ca. And if you refer people to the event, for every ticket you sell, I'll give you 40 Canadian dollars. So feel free to reach out to me. Again, that email is contact@btcsessions.ca. If you want to do some affiliate work and get some people learning Bitcoin. My goal here is to get people off to a good start so they know how to actually create and back up a wallet. They know what to use. And I'm trying to inject a little bit of healthy skepticism when it comes to the onslaught of bullshit that people have to endure when they first dive into Bitcoin, because there's a lot of people that will come at saying to them, you know, this is the next Bitcoin, this is what's important, and Bitcoin's obsolete and it's going to go away. I want people to have a good litmus test for bullshit. And if they can start to understand Bitcoin first and why it was created and what it does and what it doesn't do, then they can start to look at other things and have that inquisitive mind where they get to compare and actually come to their own conclusions with a decent base of knowledge first. So if you're interested in helping me out with that, shoot me an email and I will be happy to sign you up and get you going with an affiliate code. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, hit like, and hit the bell notification icon. And if you really like what you saw, you can drop me a Bitcoin Lightning Network tip at my tippin.me page. With that, I am out. I will see you guys tomorrow for your daily session.